been using CANTAB since 1986, which is almost at the beginning when Trevor and I collaborated on a study of Korsakoff syndrome. But what I wanted to talk to you about today is schizophrenia, specifically the results of our CANTAB findings in the West London study of first episode schizophrenia. And in this study, we recruited patients at the very beginning of their illness, on and off for 10 years, between 1995 and 2005. And we followed them up every year or so, up to about 5 years post-onset. In terms of cognition, our aim was to characterise the cognitive deficit. In those days, the pertinent questions were, is cognitive impairment present at the beginning of the illness? If so, does it progress? Is it a deteriorating condition? And is there a cognitive signature, now called a cognitive phenotype? At the time, there were several influential hypotheses. One was that it may be a fronto-subcortical problem, the interaction between frontal cortex and basal ganglia, and another suggesting that it may be a dementia of the frontal lobe type. So we used a whole range of tests from the CANTAB battery of memory and executive function in a large group of patients and their healthy controls. The control scores are plotted as 0, and these are the patient's results as numbers of standard deviations below the control. And this is what we found. And as you can see, the patients were impaired across the board to the same extent on all measures that we took using the CANTAB. There was also some evidence that their IQ had declined from estimated pre-morbid levels. So this may be regarded as disappointing. This kind of finding has been found on numerous occasions in other studies. The current view is that people with schizophrenia have a generalized cognitive deficit, which is present from the onset of psychosis, it's stable thereafter, in other words, it's not progressive. And the most significant predictor of outcome, of functional outcome, as to how patients perform in terms of their daily living skills and occupation, is actually cognitive function, much more so than symptoms. And it's recognition of this fact that the current focus is switching away from describing the neuropsychological impairment to cognitive remediation. How do we get these patients better at the beginning of their illness? One kind of aim in cognitive remediation therapy is to improve metacognition, in other words, their insight into cognitive difficulties, and to get them to develop strategic approaches to problem solving. So arguably, cognitive remediation will build on existing cognitive strengths. So rather than me talking about what is impaired in schizophrenia, for the rest of the talk, I'm going to show you 3 circumstances where we've managed to tease out, using CANTAB tests, what is preserved and what is impaired. So cognitive remediation involves learning from experience. As we heard from Trevor's talk this morning, the ideal test to look at this is the IDED test. Not only does the IDED measure shifting your attention to a different stimulus in different dimensions, as we've heard earlier, but it also looks at other forms of experience-dependent learning. For example, discrimination learning from positive and negative feedback, reversal learning, in other words, learning to change responses when these stimuli are no longer relevant, and rule abstraction, learning to generalize responses from specific experiences. So we looked at a large group of patients with first episode psychosis on these other measures in the ED-ID task. And to summarize, essentially we found that discrimination learning is intact. Patients can abstract the rule they've learned to a more general condition to the same degree as controls, but reversal learning is impaired and set shifting is impaired. And this impairment in reversal learning is a stable trait which we found existed across every subsequent measure over the first 6 years of illness. So we've heard a lot about reversal learning today, and I'm hoping, I was very encouraged that reversal learning may be a possible target for remediation in patients with psychosis, as well as in other conditions. Another approach we've taken using CANTAB is with the One Touch Tower of London, which was adapted by Tim Hodgson for use in eye movements. So if you remember, in this study, in this task, patients have to work out the number of moves in their head that it will take to move the balls in the workspace to match the same pattern, if you like, in the goal space. In the Hodgson protocol, patients were filmed or videoed while doing this task, and their eye movements were recorded. And this is possibly a way of getting at the strategy patients use when they're trying to solve this problem. Hodgson had showed that controls use the goal space to register and check the position of the balls, and the workspace to work out the solution. And we were pretty much astonished to find that the patients approached the problems very similar to controls. So they used the same scan paths between the goal space and the workspace. They checked the goal space more frequently as the problems got harder to the same degree, and they used more time in the workspace looking at the balls to the same degree as controls as the problems got harder. And they also focused on problem-critical balls to the same degree as controls. This is a so-called blue ball problem, where subjects have to shunt the ball to one side while another ball is moved into the middle pocket before it is moved back. Both controls and patients focus on this blue ball to a higher degree than other balls, suggesting that they're using similar strategies. The only difference we found in the patients was that they tended to gaze for longer periods of time in the goal space, in the workspace, and this wasn't accountable by slower oculomotor metrics or generalized slowing overall. So we hypothesized that this may be a working memory deficit, that patients had difficulty consolidating information into working memory and that they had to stare longer at the problems to try and work it out. Quentin Hughes has recently been doing a computational analysis of our data and has shown that in all people who do this task, the data is best explained by planning and executing a series of sub-goals, but that patients show a reduced tendency to hold on to particular selected sub-goals. So there's a larger number of volatile sub-goals, the patients being selected before they reach the target. That's explaining why they get fewer problems solved in the minimum number of moves. And one possibility is that these volatile sub-goals reflect a failure to maintain information in working memory. And this is possibly another target for remediation. And it may be in this task particularly if you direct the patients to look more up at the goal space more often, they may be able to overcome their working memory deficit. So the third type of approach we've used to try and tease apart the different cognitive processes is to look at inhibition or impulsivity. The first study was to compare the volitional control of motor inhibition using the stop signal reaction time task, where patients or subjects have to inhibit a planned act at the sound of a beep. And this is thought to be controlled by sets of cognitive processes mediated by the frontal lobe. And we compared this to a mask priming task developed by Martin Eimer, which does not require volitional inhibition, but automatic inhibition. And this task has been shown to be impaired in patients with basal ganglia lesions, such as Parkinson's disease and Huntington's chorea. What we found that patients with first episode of schizophrenia were intact on the mask priming task, but impaired on the stop signal task, suggesting that their problem with inhibition, if it exists, is due to impairment in the cortical control of attention that is required to perform this task, rather than any basal ganglia deficit. But this doesn't mean that patients have problems with inhibition across the board. The second study that we performed was to compare their stop signal reaction time with their performance on another task of impulsive responding, the information sampling task first developed by Luke Clark. In this task, people have to uncover various boxes and at some point along the road have to decide whether there are more blue or yellow boxes in the array. There are two conditions. One is with no penalty and another with a penalty which encourages them to respond impulsively, because the longer they wait before making a decision, the less points they earn. And we found that patients with schizophrenia had no problems in this task. So there's no evidence for impulsive responding for reward points, suggesting that they can reflect and use information to guide their decisions. Of interest was when we looked at the patients alone, we found that those who were continuing to use cannabis were more impaired, they were more impulsive than those who never or were abstinent from cannabis use, which recapitulates the finding of Luke Clark in cannabis users and underlines the difficulties that we have in patients with psychosis who continue to smoke cannabis. So how have we used CANTAB to help us? Well, in summary, at the core of the widespread cognitive impairment is a difficulty in maintaining information and working memory, and difficulty in adapting behaviour to novel circumstances. But from our studies, we've shown that patients can approach complex tasks and develop strategies effectively. They can learn and apply rules, and they can reflect on information and use it to guide decisions. And it's possible that these areas of intact normal functioning will form the building blocks for cognitive remediation in future studies. Thank you.